The zenith spire was a needle of diamond and cold gas piercing the silence of the belt. Inside, the air tasted of ionized oxygen and the faint, copper scent of luxury. Kale adjusted his initiate's tunic, feeling the stiff fabric chafe against his throat. He was 19th in line for the Varantian security detail, a position that mostly involved standing very still and looking impressive. Across the hall, the human stood by a reinforced viewport. Warden Elias Thorne did not look impressive. He looked like a man who had spent too much time in gravity wells. His uniform was a muted charcoal, devoid of the iridescent filaments that Kale's people favored. Every morning at precisely 0600, Thorne would open his security locker. The magnetic latch always gave the same rhythmic, dull click. Clack thud. It was a sound of absolute, boring routine. To Kale, whose people measured their history in 10,000-year cycles of glory, the scuff of Thorne's worn leather boot against the floor suddenly felt louder than the Archduchess's approaching procession. It was a jagged interruption to the spire's practiced elegance. Archduchess Xylia didn't walk. She drifted. Her four arms were draped in spun starlight, and her bioluminescent scales pulsed with a rhythmic violet hue that signaled absolute boredom. As she rounded the corner, her entourage followed like a shimmering tail. She stopped directly in front of Thorne. "You," she said, her voice like grinding glass. "The little warden. Do you ever tire of standing in the shadows of your betters?" Thorne's gaze remained fixed on the middle distance. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. "Just doing the job, ma'am," he replied. His voice was a low rasp, steady as a heartbeat. Kale watched from his post, expecting the human to grovel. Instead, there was a strange gravity around Thorne. It was a density of presence that Kale couldn't find in the Varantian combat manuals. Deep in the Spire's archives, Chronicler Zale was accessing a restricted data spool. As the Varantian initiate, Kale had been taught that humans were entropy blind, a species that built things only to watch them rot. It was a core tenet of Varantian social science. Weaker species lacked the collective foresight to maintain a civilization for more than a few centuries. But as Zale scrolled through the Forbidden Ghost key files, his hands began to shake. The science of information entropy was clear. Any empire could be toppled if you removed just 3 structural pillars. The Valoran hegemony had fallen not to ships, but to a series of perfectly timed bank failures and leaked mistress identities. Zale's eyes widened as he compared the facial geometry of the ghost key from 30 years ago to the man currently standing outside the Duchess's suite. It was the same bone structure, the same tired, lethal eyes. He didn't wait to finish the report. He deactivated his terminal and fled the room, his ceremonial staff clattering against the deck. The air in Envoy Celine Vane's private office was thick with the scent of ozone and unshared secrets. On her desk sat a single, lukewarm cup of synthetic broth. Its surface tension remained perfectly unbroken, a small, golden mirror reflecting the flickering star charts above. Thorne did not sit when she offered. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at a localized map of the human colony worlds. 3 million lives represented by tiny, vulnerable pulses of light. "Xylia isn't to burn them, Elias," Celine said, her voice barely a whisper. "The false flag is set for the gala. If those bombs go off, the Varantian fleet has authorization to stabilize our sectors." Thorne's eyes tracked the blinking lights. For a moment, the warden was gone, replaced by something older and much colder. "She's built her house on glass," Thorne said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn brass coin, a relic from an Earth that no longer used physical currency. He flipped it once. The metallic ping echoed in the small room. "Wake the network," he murmured. Kale, still assigned to the outer perimeter, watched as the spire's atmosphere shifted. It started with a single, frantic notification on a junior aide's datapad. Then another. Within the hour, the shining tail of Xylia's entourage began to fray as her financial backers received encrypted dossiers detailing their own black market slave trades and hidden treasons. The Archduchess was in the middle of a grand speech about the inherent stability of Varantian genetics when her primary general simply turned and walked out of the room. She faltered. She looked for her chief advisor, but he was staring at a leak that proved he had been siphoning royal tides for decades. Kale saw her corner Thorn in the North Hall. Her scales were flushed a violent, bruised purple. "You did this," she hissed, her 4 hands trembling as she reached for the ceremonial dagger at her waist. "You think a few whispers can undo 10,000 years of rule?" Thorn didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't have to. "I didn't destroy you, Duchess," he said, his voice cutting through her rage like a scalpel. "I just stopped helping you hide." Xylia screamed for her guards to seize him. They stood like statues. They had seen the Ghost Key files. They knew that fighting him was like trying to punch the wind. Kale watched the Duchess collapse into herself, the starlight of her gown suddenly looking like cheap, tattered cloth. The entropy blind, humans hadn't fired a single shot, yet the Varantian hegemony's presence at the summit had evaporated in a single afternoon of cold, calculated truth. Later, the transport bay was a cavern of hollow, ringing silence. Thorn walked toward the civilian shuttle, his gait heavy and unhurried. He paused by the envoy's desk, placing the worn brass coin on the polished wood. It made a soft, final clink. He passed a group of new recruits near the airlock. One of them, a girl with a bright, untainted smile, nodded as he moved by. "Safe travels, Sarge," she said. Thorn stopped. He looked at her, seeing a future that didn't involve dossiers or dead empires. "You too, kid," he said. He stepped into the shuttle and took a seat by the darkened window. The spire became a vanishing point against the black. The coin on the desk caught the light of a distant, dying sun. How many empires must fall before man is allowed to simply go home? We'll be here tomorrow to tell the next one. Join us.